One thing that is really important to understand about Android development is that because Android runs on so many different kinds of hardware, there are going to be major differences in that hardware. As an Android developer, you have to at least understand what those hardware differences are so that you don't write applications that only run on one particular device or perform poorly with different hardware configurations. By far, the biggest hardware difference that Android developers have to deal with is screen resolutions. There are many different resolutions for all the different devices out there. Just phones themselves have widely varied resolutions. As display technology has improved, the resolutions on phones have been going up, up, up. Fortunately, Android makes it possible for you to define different layouts and views for your application based on screen resolution. But it is important to think about this when designing an application. Another major difference to consider is a fairly recent change that has been made to the Android operating system. Many of the old Android devices relied on a set of hardware buttons that were available on each device to do things like go back, open a menu, and search. Android 4.0 started to move away from the hardware buttons in favor of on-screen navigation buttons and what is called an Android action bar. In fact, one of Google's devices, the Nexus 4, doesn't have any hardware buttons on the front of the device at all. We'll talk about this more when we actually develop an application, but it is something to think about. There are also many other capabilities that may or may not exist on different hardware devices, from the ability to make a call to the various sensors like accelerometers, which tell you how a device is tilted and how it's moved, to expandable memory like SD cards and even keyboards. Most apps won't care about many of these differences, but it is important to think about if your app might care about them just to avoid an unpleasant surprise in the future.